Hey there, Jesse here. I am a professional tutor and I'm also the founder of Simplified Study. I've been a tutor for the last 11 years and have been tutoring and helping students prep for the LANTITE since 2018. Today we're going to be looking at 5 tips on how to speed up your use of the on-screen calculator provided by ACER to save you time in the test and also improve your precision. Okay, so let's first just familiarize ourselves with the ACER online, also the on-screen calculator. So you can see that it doesn't have quite as many functions as a standard scientific calculator, but this is more because there's a limit to the questions that they can ask. So you can practice using the ACER calculator in the practice material in your actual ACER account. So I would only use this calculator for your practice. I would recommend you always use it, so that you can get very, very familiar with the button layout and the functionality of it as well. But for this particular video, I'll be using this one. I don't obviously have an ACER account, so I will be using the macOS on-screen calculator. It has basically the same functionality. The button layout's slightly different, and it has a few extra functions. I won't be using any of those, obviously, and I'll point these out. So you can see here, this is what the actual ACER calculator will look like. And so you've got your basic squared, cubed, square root, and cubed root. And then you've also got percentages, parentheses or brackets, and then your basic maths operators down the right side here. Just for reference, whenever I'm calculating, you can see that the same layout for the operators down this side here, and the number key, obviously. Parentheses are over here. We actually won't be using them. And then across here, we've got our squared, our cubed, and then here's our square root and cubed root. Any of the extra buttons here, we won't be using at all, so don't worry about that. First of all is BODMAS. So you might already be familiar with the acronym BODMAS or BIDMAS, referring to the order of operations that you would follow in a calculation. So often this involves the use of brackets, which can get really quite difficult on a calculator. And it's quite tedious to be typing in brackets to make sure that you're getting the order of operations correct. The other thing is you'll notice that with the ACER on-screen calculator, they give you this really, really small little window. And so it can be quite tedious when you're trying to do fractions with brackets and things like that. So what we can do instead is we can still follow BODMAS, but we're going to hit equals between every individual calculation. And what this does is it gives you like an autosave or an update as to where the number is at. So you still do need to follow BODMAS, but it means that you don't have to type brackets each time. So if we wanted to, for example, do a calculation of say 2 plus 3, but then we wanted to square it, we then wanted to subtract 4 and then divide the whole thing by 3. What we can do, I'll bring this over here, is we follow BODMAS, so we have to do the brackets first. So we'll do 2 plus 3, but we're going to hit enter, right? And that gives us 5. And then from there, we're going to hit the squared button. We don't have to retype 5. It'll have a memory of it. So we're just going to hit squared and there, and you might have to hit enter on the ACER one, but there we go. It's 25. And then take away 4. And then we're going to hit enter, and there it is. And then we're going to divide by 3. So we just hit divide by 3 and enter. And it gives us the exact same answer as if we were to do it all with parentheses and follow BODMAS all in one calculation. And it's actually quicker. Even though there's maybe slightly more button pressing in terms of hitting enter each time, it doesn't take a whole lot of brain power or time to do. So it'll actually be a whole lot faster doing it that way. If you're not sure about the order of operations though, a good rule that you can go by is just read out the expression or the calculation. And we usually naturally kind of read it in the order of BODMAS. So if we were to read this, we would read it as 2 plus 3 squared minus 4 divided by 3. And if you think back to what we just went through, that's exactly the order that we did. We went 2 plus 3, hit enter, squared, hit enter, minus 4, enter, divide by 3, enter, and we get then 7, right? And so obviously this is a very specific kind of algebraic calculation. So you could obviously use this as part of any kind of worded problem as well, whether it was percentages or totals and that kind of thing. The second one is the answer button. So there's an answer button on the calculator. We'll just jump back here, down here at the bottom. And what this does is it automatically stores a memory of your most recently calculated answer. So if you need to reuse that answer in a subsequent calculation, you can hit that button instead of having to type it. And this is really good, especially when you're dealing with really kind of long decimals, but you don't want to round it and you want to keep using it for the next calculation. So it means that you don't have to retype it. So if we looked at an example here where we have, say, 10 minus 3 on 6 minus 3, we'll do cubed on this one. So the idea is that following BODMAS, we actually have to type this in first. But if we were to do this all in one calculation, we'd have to use a whole lot of brackets to prioritize things correctly. So again, we're going to follow BODMAS, brackets first, but we're going to use that enter trick. We're also now going to layer in, we'll have to use the answer button this time. So if we do that, the first thing we have to do is 6 minus 3. So we'll just clear that, 6 minus 3, we're going to hit enter. Next up is indices or order in the BODMAS or BIDMAS process. So that's cubed, so we're going to hit our cubed button. There it is there. Next up, we can't do divide by 3 like we were doing last time. So we actually have to do 3 divided by 27. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to type 3 divided by, even though 27 is pretty easy to remember, let's say it was 27.357900089. Then we just hit divide by, and then we just hit the answer button in that case, like that. And so then from there, when you hit the answer button, you'll have 0.11111. We then want to do 10 minus that, right? Remember that what we've got here so far is this chunk right here. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to do 10 take away, and then we'll hit that answer button. That's our answer, and then we have to round it or whatever the answer is going to be. So using the answer button is really, really handy. It means that you never have to retype a number, and you can keep using that enter trick as well. All right, so the next one then is with percentage. This is a really easy one. So I have before talked about how to convert between percentages and decimals. You still need to know how to do it for the non-calculator component, but when you're on the calculator, you don't need to actually convert it. If you want to work out something like, say, 10% of 1,836, of course there are tricks to this as well, but in terms of using the calculator, you don't actually have to do 10 divided by 100 to get the percentage as a decimal and then times that by 1836. That does work, but what you can also do is you can just do 10 and just hit percent, and it just converts it for you. I think on the ACER one, it doesn't actually show you 0.1 yet, it just says 10%. And then you can just do times 1,836, and it does the division for you. So that's really, really handy when you're using percentages. There's the percentage button. You can see just here at the top. The fourth one, so now we want to go through reversing mistakes. So this one, a lot of people would probably not even think to use this kind of idea. It's very similar to if you make an error in, like if you're typing something and you can use kind of Alt backspace to get rid of a word, or Command or Control backspace to go all the way back and delete an entire line. It just speeds up your work. We always make errors, so sometimes you might realize that you're quite a way into a calculation and that you've made an error, you've hit a button incorrectly, you've used the wrong number, you've put the decimal place in the wrong spot. So what you can do is you can hit the back button if you haven't yet hit enter, but let's say that you've actually hit enter and you can't use the back button, and clearing would mean that you have to kind of go all the way back to the start of the calculation. Just think about doing the reverse operation, so you can actually just reverse the calculation. So let's say that I was trying to calculate 100 plus 6, but I accidentally typed it as times 6, right? And I get this. So instead of going all the way back and retyping it, what I can do is just reverse the times 6, the error that I made, by just hitting divide 6. So the opposite of times being divide, opposite of plus being minus, and vice versa. And it jumps us back to 100. And so now I can go forward and actually then hit plus 6, and I don't have to type 100 or anything. And then there's my answer. Obviously that's a simple calculation, but let's say I was quite a way in. Let's say I'd already done that 100 plus 6, I'd hit enter, divided it by 5, I then squared that, and then I cube rooted that as well. And then at the end, when I was supposed to minus 4, I accidentally hit times 4. So I accidentally hit times 4, and I've got that. It's this big, ugly, messy number. All I have to do is reverse the times 4. So just divide by 4. it sends me back to the previous answer, and now I can do it correctly and do -4. And then there's the answer. So that way then you don't have to go all the way back to the start, just reverse the error. And then finally is negative numbers and subtraction. So there's two different buttons for this on the calculator. So you can see there's a plus minus down here. This is for converting, toggling between positive and negative values. Whereas the subtraction button has a completely different function. You don't want to use the subtraction button as a negative button because it will cause a lot of trouble. And I've seen this from students before as well, where they could swear they're doing the right calculations and they're trusting the calculator, but they're still not getting the right number. And this is often the culprit. So if you're looking to work with a negative number, then we want to use this plus minus button. The good thing is you can use it at any point. So if I type in 24 and I realize, wait, I want that to be a negative, then I can just hit that button. It toggles it into a negative, and then I can keep going. I can then add to it, subtract, times, divide. If I accidentally hit it and don't want it to be negative, I can just hit it again and it toggles back off. And again, this is the exact same functionalities in the ACER calculator. If you're looking to do subtraction of two numbers, that's where you'll use the actual minus button instead. This does not act like a subtraction. You can see it puts it in front of the number. It's the sign of the number rather than a maths operator. And then finally, if you wanted to export your answer straight to the answer box, ACER does have this in their preparation strategy page, which I'll link at the bottom. You can hit this button here and it drags your answer in from the calculator. So if you've got your answer sitting in the calculator, come back to the question, hit this button and it drags the most previous calculated answer into it, so you don't have to type it again. All right, and there we go. So that is my 5 tips on how to use the calculator, the on-screen ACER calculator, to speed up your calculations, improve your accuracy and precision, and most importantly, just save you time. If you do these, then you'll find that you can blitz through the questions a whole lot faster and in the calculator active component, and you can move on then to the non-calculator component in section 2. Keep in mind that once you move on to section 2, ACER already says this, but you cannot go back to section 1, so do be sure that you're happy with all of your answers. But given that you don't have to show you're working out a lot of the time, then there's no need to be writing anything down if you can avoid it. So using these tips also means that you can just kind of do everything on screen. Cheers, guys.